Okay, so obviously we are here today to talk about the home buying process. I am Justin with the Deering team, in case you didn't meet us at the bridal show already.
Kevin,
also with the Deering team.
With the Deering
so
team.
Yeah, so the goal today is just kind of go over the process in general. Going to keep it fairly broad because it can get in depth and there's lots of steps, and kind of just get you in the right position to be ready to look for a home whenever the time is right. So, and I know this is obviously themed towards brides, so you probably got a lot going on. So whether the time is right now or later after the wedding, we will be ready to help. So obviously, so we talked about this already, but we are the Deering team. We are a team of 9. We work with home buyers. That's our role in the team. And then, obviously we have some administrative assistants, and like Mark Deering, he's the team leader. So part of the benefit of the team is that we have a lot of years of experience and scenarios that we've been through, and strategies and writing offers and that sort of thing. And then also, if Kevin's got a client that needs to see a house and he happens to be out to dinner with his wife or something, then one of us can step in and sub in. And then we are with REMAX, REMAX of Grand Rapids, and this is just patting us on the back a little bit, I guess, is we like being with REMAX because it's one of the best known brands in real estate. And this is just a sample of the last year. There was 5 REMAX agents in the top 25 of all of the West Michigan real estate agents, and we were one of those 5. So we've seen it all, and we're ready to help however we can. So let's jump into it. And basically, this first slide is just piggybacking on what we talked about already, is that, even if the time you're thinking is maybe later this year or next year to look for a home, it's never really too early to get started. The market is busy. I was just showing a house right before this, and there was cars lined up waiting to get in. So it's definitely still busy, and having that plan in place will give you the competitive advantage over other home buyers. It's important to be flexible in the market as a home buyer, especially that first-time home buyer. Price point is often competitive. So it's important to be flexible. And, if you have a lease coming up in 6 months, for example, maybe start the process a little bit earlier in anticipation of coming up against, some competition. So we're doing that planning and that preparation on the front end, because there's not a lot of think about it time when a home that interests you hits the market. And what we mean by that is, planning and preparation. Get out there, see houses, go through some homes with your agent, and try to narrow down the wants and needs. So that way, when the one that comes on, you can't really take the time to go back and have a second showing or really think about it, because there's a good chance that someone else is going to be interested in it as well. So, so the goal is, we're going to put a plan in place. We're either going to wait until, after the wedding when things settle down, or if your goal is to find a home to be in when you get married, we have different strategies and plans that we can put in place. So communication and then just getting ready to go is the key. And also, I forgot to mention, if you have questions, type them in the chat. And if it's a good time to stop in the presentation, I or Kevin will answer the questions right away. Otherwise, there's going to be time for questions at the end. So on to the next.
All right. So
Step one,
I guess this is, the start of the process, and that's meeting with an agent. So myself or Justin, being real estate professionals, obviously we're here to help you. We promote your best interest, work on your behalf. We're negotiating for you, every step of the way. Like Justin said, we're showing homes, we're prospecting properties, we are writing the offers. There's a whole process once you're under contract where we come into play. That's really when we do come into play. I mean, showing you properties and giving you our opinion, but at the end of the day, it's, your preference on what property you might want to pursue. So it's a kind of a two-way street. We're there to give guidance and give you our expertise and knowledge, with still trying to keep your thoughts and goals and vision in perspective. So So it's, the cost, I guess, is maybe something on there that it's free. There's no charge to use our service. So, why not have somebody on your side that's a professional, that's been through it? Because there's ups and there's a little bit of downs sometimes, but there's mainly ups, and we help you to get to the end goal, which is buying a home.
So that's step one. The very first thing that we are going to direct you to do when you meet with your agent and go over like this, a more specific plan even than today, would be to get pre-approved. It's the very important first step for a number of reasons. So this slide's a little bit longer than most, but one thing is you will know in advance what your payments will be. Nothing is worse than thinking, in your mind that your budget is, $250,000 for a house. You go start looking at $250,000 houses, you fall in love with one. Then once you actually run the numbers, you find out, oh shoot, I really don't want to go over 200. At that point, your expectations are now higher than what your price point is. So it's important to get that information in advance and know what your payments are going to be, even more so than the total amount that you can afford. Because obviously, for many of you, this is going to be your first home. And not your forever home. So it's more important that you can afford the monthly payments than necessarily having a plan to pay off the whole mortgage before you move. So the other good part about it is the lender will give you your credit score. So if the plan is to buy a home in 6 months, you do you get in touch with the lender for your pre-approval, you get your credit score. Even if we're out looking at homes and you decide to take a couple months off, by the time you're actually ready to write that offer, you could have gotten some tips on how to get your score up or keep it the same if it's a good score already, which could help with the costs and get you a lower interest rate and even help you afford more of a home. The other key part is that if we were out looking at houses and you wanted to write an offer on one, it is, I would say, all but impossible to get an offer accepted without a pre-approval letter or a proof of funds if you have the funds to pay cash for a home. We're going to need something to submit with the offer to show the seller and the seller's agent that you actually have the means to buy the home. The good faith estimate is something that you can get when either shopping around with lenders or each one will provide one for a specific home you're interested in, and that'll just kind of go over the terms of the loan type, the interest rate, the expected costs that you will have to close on the house, basically, and your down payment and all that sort of thing. And by the way, we will go over kind of like expected costs at the end of the presentations. So there will be several slides where we talk about some of the costs of the home buying process, and we'll go over all that at the recap at the last slide. So, and then obviously it's important, especially in the market today, to use a great local lender that has a respected image in the community. Every little bit helps if you're competing for a house. One of our favorites is right there at the top, Dan Klunder with Level 1 Bank, and we would recommend giving him a call if you don't have someone in mind, or even if you do have someone in mind and you want to compare.
It's never a bad idea to cross-reference.
Right.
Credit unions sometimes can be real competitive in their interest rates or something, but just having us maybe look at that and then cross-reference it with one of our lenders and just say, hey, yeah, that makes sense for you, or no, this is actually a better choice for you. So shopping for a lender is never a bad idea. So picking areas where you want to move, obviously location is one of the biggest things about real estate that makes or breaks your deal and what you're looking for. So we're going to go to the next slide in a minute here. It's going to talk about how we can weigh your wants and your needs, breaking down, I have to have this, but I can settle if it doesn't have that, 3 bedrooms I must have, so we'll set up different search criterias and start sending you, we'll set up that saved search around what we build on this next slide.
Yeah, and remember, one key part here on this slide is just no matter what your budget is, the perfect home does not really exist. We're looking for an 8 or a 9 out of 10, not a 10 out of 10. People who build their home, by the time they're done, they wish they would have done something different. People who have $1 million budget want something that they need $2 million to have. So it's not uncommon to you're not settling, but there's always going to be the wants and the needs. And that's where this next slide comes into play, and some of the things that we use for that.
Yeah. And like Justin said, I mean, your first home is just kind of getting you out of that renting environment, owning something. You might put a little equity into that home, and then on the next one, have something already done, that second bathroom's already there. You didn't have to do it yourself, or, it's different things like that. So yeah, we have these cool tools that we can weigh the wants and needs. So, you're shooting down that list and you're checking, yeah, that's a need, or no, I can deal without that. If it comes down to it, that's just a want. So we'll take all of what you fill out on that search criteria, characteristics criteria, and then we'll put that into our saved search, which will go to your email account, where we automatically start sending you properties. Say you're looking down here, the Jenison, Hudsonville area, looks like under 250, no, 300. So then every house that's listed on the market, you don't have to scramble and, be scrolling on Zillow. I know it's fun, but we'll get you covered and make sure these properties are being sent to you automatically. And that's
kind of like the net, to make sure that you don't miss anything. So this is where we plug in your wants, or not your wants, your needs. Sorry. So you need the price point, you need the area, you need the certain bedroom count. Your wants would be something that would be plugged in, by just clicking on the houses, looking closer, going out and seeing them. And that's where you kind of get a feel for the wants versus the needs. So this is the safety net to make sure we don't miss anything. So you get a list of houses you want to see, and then obviously you get to do the fun part and go out and look at them in person. One important note is that homes tend to look a lot different in person than they do in the pictures. A lot of times they look better in the pictures because it's the job of the listing agent to sell the home. It's our job as buyers agents to point out the pros and cons of each property. And, the listing agent obviously is taking a picture of the nicely redone kitchen and not necessarily taking a picture of the furnace that might be older in the basement. So it's very important to, when we're walking through, to point out those things to you, talk about how it compares to other homes that we've seen in the price point, and then also kind of get a feel for how your wants and needs might shift when you're going through a few homes. So you might say, hey, we really need those 4 bedrooms. Well, then you go through some homes, you're like, you know what, as long as there's 3 bedrooms and like maybe a finished space for a basement, then you'll be all set. So some of the stuff, and we'll update your search as it goes along. A couple things about the team concept that we talked about at the beginning is, if for some reason, one of us is out of town, let's say you're working with me and I'm out of town, Kevin can jump in, sub in, or one of the other guys can jump in and show that home for you. It's always our goal to not be the reason you don't get a chance to see a home. If it sells before, for some reason, we can't show it to you, obviously we're not doing a good enough job. So obviously, there's case by cases, occasionally that happens, but our main goal is to make sure that we're providing the service that you need to see the house. And then obviously, like if you're out of town, we have ways that we can go through and do a virtual tour or a video tour. Or if your fiance is out of town and you're not, you can go through and videotape it, obviously, with us, and show him.
Or
her, if there's any of the future grooms watching. So then obviously we go out and see a house, and then what do we do?
Write an offer up.
All right.
We sit down at the kitchen table and get the ink pen out.
No.
What
do we do?
We're not doing that anymore. We have all the documents are online, actually, so it's kind of convenient. I mean, like Justin said, we can literally do a video tour for you. You can be out of town. We can send you documents. You can buy things from not even right here physically. So, but yeah, we'll get all the first thing would probably get the payment information, because each house would be a little different based on the taxes, the size of the lot, the size of the home, the school district. There's a whole bunch of things that go into that, and that'll come from the lender. So we can get a breakdown of your monthly payment for the mortgage, and then possibly, a cash to close scenario, how much you would need for closing. And then there's a lot of different strategies, and we'll kind of touch on those as we go. We shoot a lot of videos actually to help clients about different strategies when we're writing offers and how to appeal to a seller, because the seller is it is a kind of a seller's market still. They're on some cases in control, who's going to be the best buyer to work with. So having, that pre-approval letter is step one and must have that. And then there's a couple things that go into writing this offer, like disclosures. So we'll go through the seller's disclosure, have you sign off on that. That's just a history of the home that the seller knows about, the maintenance that they've done. So then we'll sign off on all the documents. It's a purchase agreement. That's a templated purchase agreement. So it's standard across all properties, whether it's, a shack down the road or $1 million listing on the lakeshore. It's the same document. So each time it's the same thing. We're just plugging in the information and checking which contingencies we want to use. And so kind of, like I said, we don't want to go through a ton of it because it is a lengthy document, but
we do go, obviously go through it and explain it when we're actually writing the offer.
Right. So. Thank you. And so the offer is then sent over to that listing agent, and sometimes we're seeing deadlines with a lot of these hot price ranges and nice, communities that are getting a lot of attention right now. So sometimes they're presenting 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, plus offers. So we cross our fingers and hope we did a good job at writing that offer. That seller's either going to accept it and say, wow, they did a great job of showing us they want the house. They're going to maybe like a few things about it and then counter offer, or they're just going to take another offer if they're competing. So those are kind of the 3 outcomes.
So ideal scenario, you write that offer, you get accepted, and then you celebrate, but you celebrate just a little bit because there are other hurdles to clear that we're going to be talking about the rest of this presentation. But so we like to celebrate, congratulations, have a nice dinner, celebrate a little bit along the way until you actually are the homeowner, because now you're not the homeowner yet. So the very first thing that we're going to do after that accepted offer is we're going to collect the earnest money deposit. Again, we'll talk about kind of costs of that at the end, but what that means is it's going to be something that we collect and held by REMAX, and it is always yours money and will be applied towards your down payment at closing. It's just collected up front if for some reason you walk away from the property and you aren't covered under the contingencies in the purchase agreement, then you would forfeit it to the seller. So it's just kind of like a good faith. That's, also called a good faith deposit, showing that you intend to buy the home.
Sometimes those can be, like we were talking on the previous slide, like strategies.
Yeah.
The earnest money deposit we typically collect is about a 1% of the. We'll go over at the end, I know. Yeah. But just touching on that briefly.
Yeah. And again, we'll have talked about all of this, before actually getting to the point of offer acceptance. We'll go over all of it when we're writing the offer and coming up with the strategy. So you get that offer accepted, you drop off that check within 48 hours. You get more documents popping up in your email to sign, all kind of standard stuff that we can go over at the time. We'll get the inspection scheduled, which we'll talk about what that looks like on the next slide. Assuming you ask for one, obviously. We'll get all the information that your lender needs over to them. And this is like, we handle all this stuff. The only thing that you're going to have to do is if the lender requests something, provide it to them. If we request you sign something, read it over, ask questions, do it. But for everything else, it's all kind of a smooth, well-oiled machine. Jessica, who was on that first slide that you saw with the team picture, she jumps in at this point and really kind of makes sure all the checklist gets done. And during this time, remember, you still don't own the home, so it's important not to make any large purchases on credit that could, affect your debt to income ratios. If you make a cash deposit, like let's say you get a gift from grandma and grandpa for the wedding for $500, and you deposit it and you're under contract on a home, the lender is going to want a proof of that. So if she gives you a cash, they're going to want a paper trail. So maybe hang on to it until after closing before depositing it. And then obviously don't do anything during this time that's going to affect your credit negatively, because it could change the terms of your loan, could change your interest rate, or even potentially if you qualify for a loan. So, and on to the home inspection.
Home inspections, all right. My favorite. Unless you waive them, of course, in your offer, which we're talking about that document you have never seen. But it's one of the contingencies that's in the purchase agreement. It outlines a 10-day window that you have to do inspections on the home. Basically, again, we're going to talk about costs at the end, but it's a evaluation of a home by a licensed builder, contractor, somebody with experience around structures, and not just like, oh, that looks like a great kitchen, they make sure it functions well.
Because obviously we point out stuff as we're going through that we think looks good or doesn't. We might go through and say, hey, that roof looks like it's got some life on it. And then the inspector comes through and verifies or gives us their professional opinion. So
right. And they fine tooth comb it. So it can be kind of an overwhelming step, for some, because it's like, oh my gosh, the house has every line item or something, so yes, there's a lot that conditions, wear and tear come up in a house. I mean, it's like a car, there's a ton of moving pieces and stuff. So we're basically focused on those large items at this point, safety issues, high dollar repairs we weren't expecting.
Can you give me an example of like a safety issue?
A safety issue, yeah. I mean, a gas leak, or steps that are down to the basement that are falling down or something. I mean, like
Sure.
Uneven.
So basically, anything that like a reasonable buyer is going to want taken care of, because they're not going to move into the house. So, like you said, gas leak. We go through the inspection, we see the furnace is leaking gas. We're going to ask for that to be fixed because they probably don't know about it, and they probably would like to get it fixed too.
Yeah.
But then, talk about obviously what would happen after the inspection.
So after the inspection, we kind of comb through it and we decide, okay, yeah, I remember seeing that that door hinge was kind of messed up when we looked at it, or I kind of expected some of these outlets that need maybe replaced, or some of these smaller items I'm okay with, so we just move on and continue into the next step of the transaction. Or we say, whoa, that home or that water heater doesn't work, the home inspector said. Oh, you're right. Let's see if we can get the seller to, see if there's a repair that we can have done. So we'll call that HVAC company, or, somebody, that heating cooling company to take care of something like that. And we'll try to have the seller replace it. And then, or, maybe that seller, it had 5 other offers, and they say, hey, I don't really want to spend any money on the house. Somebody will buy it as is. That's, if you guys want this repair done and that's a deal breaker for you, then I'm going to try to sell it without, doing that repair. So we can have the option to not purchase the house if we roadblock into something that we feel is a deal breaker in that scenario.
Yeah. And again, we go over the inspection report with you. We get a copy of it. We say how it compares to other homes that are priced in that price point. It's, it was just a case-by-case basis. Was there 10 offers that you beat out to get the home? You might not have as much flexibility in asking for repairs. Has it been sitting on the market for 6 months and they're trying to unload it? You might have some more options to try to negotiate some repairs if something comes up. So again, case by case.
In that 8 out of 10, one house might have a older furnace. The other house might have an older roof. I mean, right. there's these different items that kind of rotate around that. In different price ranges that you'll have to kind of just say, okay, I can handle that. I can eventually replace this or that. Obviously, if it's on its last leg, those are different stories.
Yep. And then if you decide, if we can't figure anything out and you do decide to move on, that would be a case where you get that deposit back that we talked about, because we would be covered under the purchase agreement for that. So after the home inspection, that's when kind of things cool down a little bit for the buyer, and you're just kind of waiting for the lender to do a lot of stuff, which would be to get an appraiser out to the home. And what the appraiser does is they go out there and they look through the house. They don't look at it like the inspector does. They don't necessarily go over it that much. They want to just see the layout, the room sizes, how it looks, overall condition. And they'll kind of compare it to other similar homes that have sold recently in the area, and they'll assign a value to it. And they'll say, hey, let's say you purchased the home for $200,000 and it appraises for $210,000. That's great. If it has to appraise for at least the price that we've agreed to purchase it for. So if it appraises for 210, that's great. You got instant equity in the home. We move on. We don't even hear about the appraisal unless there's an issue. So like we might not even know what it appraised for unless you share it with us. But
and usually homes come in, they rarely go above too much,
it's rarer they go above too much, but because usually, but it happens. But the point is, it's got to meet or exceed the value that we've agreed to purchase. If it does not, then we have what would say an issue with the appraisal, and we have some options at that point. The very first thing that we do as agents is we look through that appraisal and decide if we think the appraiser did a good job on it. Mm-hmm. By that, I mean using comparables that are similar, adjusting for value correctly, and that sort of thing. And if we think they did a good job, then there's not much we can do. If we don't think they did a good job, then we submit some comparable homes that we think are better, and we submit those to the lender and ask for them to change the value of the home. You might be wondering, well, why do we want to make the price of the home go higher? The reason is we we're in a problem situation where we have agreed to pay $200,000 for the house, for example. It appraises for $190,000. The seller is expecting their $200,000. The lender will only give us $190,000, so there's that $10,000 shortfall in there. So unless we can get that value up to meet it, we have to either renegotiate the purchase price, which, remember, it's a kind of a busy market, and they might not be willing to do that, or we have to cover the difference by increasing the down payment. So if we get a $190,000 appraisal on a $200,000 house, and we say, hey, seller, we want to only pay $190,000, and they say, hey, buyer, we want $200,000 like you agreed to. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll meet in the middle, because you're far along this process already. You're close to closing. You're through inspections. They want their money. But obviously the key would be you'd have to come up with that difference out of pocket. So it's going to add to the cost of closing. Or again, that's why we're trying to get the value up, so we don't have to worry about that and have you bring more money to the table. If for some reason, we say we'll pay only what it appraised for, we'll pay $195,000, and they say, no, we still want that full price, and we're not able to do it or unwilling to do it, that's when you move on again. But at that point, you're out the cost of the inspection that we already had, you're out the cost of the appraisal. So most of the time we get it figured out, I would say. But at the rare occasion, if you can't get it figured out, you move on, you get that deposit back like we talked about, because there's a contingency in the purchase agreement for the appraisal.
Yeah, I bring up, in an offer situation, when somebody's concerned about, oh my gosh, is it worth this much? Or, if I'm going way above the asking price, if we're worried about it appraising, that's a safety net for you, because the bank's going to stop you from overpaying. That's what I tell people. I'm like, well, you're not going to ever literally overpay, because the bank can stop that with an appraisal and say, no, it's not worth the $200,000.
It's common in this market to have to pay almost over what it appraises for sometimes to just get the home, knowing that it's an appreciating market, and it's kind of like the get it price, and that in 6 months you're going to make up that value, or in a year you're going to make up that value.
Need to toggle full screen.
Someone's asking toggle full screen. I'm not sure I know how to do that, but we will just keep rolling.
Are the slides okay? Is that just making sure?
I think you can probably see the slides just on our faces, which I don't know. Do you really need to see them that close?
No.
So, okay.
Closing day. Is that my slide now?
Yep.
Okay. So we are officially going to own the property. It's about a 30-day window, like Justin mentioned, that after the inspection and the appraisal happen. And, if you're a cash buyer, it's a little shorter window, but so it's about a 30-day turnaround. The lender will give us what's called the clear to close. So that your file has gone under the underwriting process, and they've checked out your loan application. It's good to go, and we're ready to sign off on all the paperwork. There's a lot of papers that go into it. You're signing a lot of documents that you've already seen. You're literally signing the same loan application that you're getting from the lender, a lot more disclosures that they're kind of just in there to protect you and everybody involved. So it's really, I mean, it is a lot of signatures, but it's a fun day. And so you own the house, you might get the keys that day. There's a possession period that we'll know about ahead of time when we're looking at properties. So some sellers are ready to move out. They've found where they're going. They're empty nesters. They already bought the condo. So they're ready to give you the keys right away. Or there's the families in transition. They're struggling to find that next house still. They're shopping just like you're shopping, or they just got that offer accepted. So now their house is up for sale. So there's a little bit of a crossover that they'll need to move out. So, so there might be a possession window, typically less than 1 month to maybe 45 days.
And that is obviously, like Kevin said, that's something that we'll know about before the offer, so it won't be a surprise. And also that is something that as a first-time home buyer, if you don't already own a home, you have an advantage over. You can offer that possession period to the person who maybe needs it to move out, to find their next home. So your price, it's not always about price, when we're writing an offer. It's about, can we make it the easiest offer, the smoothest offer for that seller in possession, giving them some time after closing to move, oftentimes as part of that. So here's the expected cost slide. So this is kind of what we were referencing. And a lot of this it varies. A lot of it varies, especially the down payment part. There's programs for veterans where you can get 0% down on a home. There's programs for if you buy a home in a rural setting that can be 0% down. And then all the way up, a very common one for a first-time home buyer would be like a 3.5% down payment FHA mortgage. And then obviously options all the way up to 20% down or more. It just depends on your scenario. The lender that you connect with is going to go over all these things, put you in the best program, and we're going to know about it going forward, what's best and what your expected costs are. Remember, we talked about that good faith estimate. So you'll know all that on the front end, but just know there are options to purchase without having a big chunk of cash ready to go. It's very common for first-time home buyers. That earnest money deposit that we talked about, that's going to be collected after an accepted offer, that's going to, like Kevin mentioned, usually going to be about 1% of the purchase price. So that $200,000 house example we talked about, you're going to have a $2,000 earnest money. Oftentimes, that is another thing that's like the standard that can be changed. If we're competing and we want to up that deposit to show them that we're super interested, you might make a higher earnest money. If you have if you're doing a 0% down loan and you don't have the funds available, sometimes we can try to go a little bit less. But they are going to want to see some type of earnest money deposit collected. After that earnest money is the home inspection. That's going to range between, depending on size of house, and like if you buy a condo that doesn't have a basement, it's going to be a different cost than if you buy like a 3,000 square foot house. And then there's obviously add-ons that they could do different types of home inspections. So they'll go over all that with you, We have a preferred home inspection that if you don't have your own, we always kind of refer, and because they do such a great job, and their costs are going to be somewhere between $275 to $450 typically. Again, that could vary some, but that's a general cost. And remember, that would be due when you do the actual home inspection. So if for some reason you back out of the home, you would still owe that money. The closing costs.
You want me to help at this point?
Why am I?
No, you're fine. I'm just saying.
Jump in if you think of something, but no, I got it.
I was gonna say the home inspection too. There's like radon tests, and termite tests,
right?
Those are kind of the add-ons Justin was mentioning.
Yeah.
And
so obviously they're a business. They're trying to sell more inspections, and some of them are.
If there's a pool out back, you can call a pool company. I mean, your 10-day window is you to just kind of do your diligence. But we recommend the home inspection, the piece that's worth the most money, just kind of get a good overall, hey, where does this kind of fall in the scale of homes? It's not going to be a perfect 10, but hey, we want an A- or so.
Yeah.
So anyway,
carry on. So closing costs. So that would be part of like what is actually due when you come to the closing day and you sign the papers along with your down payment. The guess is usually around 3% of the purchase price, but it is on kind of like a bell curve. So like the higher you get on on purchase price, it's not always 3%. Some of the costs are fixed costs. But that's what that 3% of purchase price, sorry, the 3% is going to include is things like the appraisal that we talked about, a fee for the lender that they're going to charge for doing the loan. You're going to have an admin fee from the brokerage. You're going to have a fee from the title company to actually do the signing of the paperwork. You're going to have some prorated taxes to either a credit or a debit coming to get all square on the taxes when you actually purchase the home. You're going to have title insurance, which we're not going to get into because that's like a whole separate video, but it is something that the lender will require that is a cost. And again, that's like a regulated cost. And then a big chunk of that 3% is going to be for your escrow account. If you, part of that monthly payment estimate that you get from the lender is going to include the principal that you're paying down on the mortgage, the interest that the lender is earning on the mortgage. Then the escrow account will be a fund that is you pay money into for taxes and insurance. So when that insurance bill comes due once a year or that tax bill comes due, the funds are in there already and the lender will pay it for you. So you got to have a certain balance in there at closing. So when the bills are due, it never drops below zero. And then the key part is, remember, you do not page. Hold on a second. Do you need that? We're wrapping up. Can we just finish? Okay. Sorry. Remember, you do not pay any agents or your buyer's agent a fee. We don't. Woo! We do get paid. It comes from the sellers. From the sellers. That's how real estate works. Is when you list the house, you pay a commission to the agent, and it goes to the buyer's agent and the seller's agent. So when you're buying, you don't pay that commission. So that's great. That's definitely why you want your own representation and someone negotiating for you rather than someone negotiating for the seller. So I didn't see any questions pop up in the chat as we were going, but we do have some time for some questions, and we'll stick around for 5 minutes or so in case some questions come in. Otherwise, we'll do a follow-up email, obviously, and you'll have all of our contact information if you would be interested in more specific meeting or face-to-face meeting to go over your home search and plans. Love to help you, or if you think of questions after the fact. So anything to add?
I think we covered it. Thank you guys for tuning in, and it is a big step in life, and you guys are just getting married and getting ready to be. And, so we're just here as a reference, if anything. So if you're like, I don't think we're ready, like it doesn't hurt to give us a call or, talk to a lender. That's probably the first step too, is just, hey, where are we at? What's our timeline? Are we 2 years out or, maybe even 6 months down the road? It may be a different scenario for you. So,
I mean, the key is, like we talked about on the very first slide, just be prepared, come up with a plan. This is first step, learning a little bit more about the home buying process. Second step is actually like setting up a time to meet and go over your goals. And the goals are going to be different if you're getting kicked out of your apartment in 3 months or you're getting married and your parents are saying, once you're married, you're not living in our house anymore and you need a place to stay.
Did that happen to you?
No.
Oh,
no, they kicked me out well before that. Kicked me out well before that, but no, there's or if you're thinking next year, well, let's get you on the right track and let's start sending you properties that are coming on the market, once a week. So you can at least kind of keep track of what's out there and get you on the right track and make sure you're in the best position possible when the time is right. And, just because you might not be ready to buy a house now doesn't mean we're going to ignore you. We're going to help.
Right. Yeah.
So not seeing any questions coming in yet. So I know we went over a lot of stuff. Again, we'll maybe stick around for another couple minutes just in case, but otherwise, thanks for coming, and we will send you a follow-up email and definitely reach out if you think of any questions.